And we are live. This will be Taking Into Account, episode 16. We're doing it on Friday again. I think this is the third Friday in a row I've done Taking Into Account rather than doing it on Thursday. It's because I've had 3 Thursdays in a row that were a problem. Let me mute the live stream here on my end. Yeah, so Thursday's been a problem, but luckily I have had the last 3 Friday mornings off in a row. So it has, allowed me to do Friday Taking Into Account, but rather than pre-recording it, because I'm already late on Friday getting this out to you guys, I've just been doing these live on Friday morning. This is a temporary thing, though. I'll probably get back to doing these on Thursdays very soon, depending on my work schedule. It's kind of hectic this time of year. For those of you not aware, I work in retail, and this is the busy time of year. Things really ramp up until right after Christmas. Yeah, we've got several people already in the chat. Richard was here. Hopefully no Disco Dingo. Not discussing Ubuntu 1904 today. Not the code name anyway, although I think Disco Dingo is a fantastic name. John was here. He said hi. I think he's still here. Yeah, John's still here. How you doing, John? Rob is here. Good morning, DT. Good morning, all. Finally made one. Yeah, Logan is here. Good morning. Yeah, Gian, Climby, Ron, Big Pod. Like everybody made it. Whiskey Echo Bravo, hello from Poland. It's 5 p.m. here. Yeah, TKZ is from the UK. John, of course, is from the UK. Chaz is here. Ivan. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all. Now, typically, these Taking Into Account episodes, when I pre-record them, are 30 to 45 minutes. So to keep the episode in a manageable kind of time frame, I don't want to be recording longer than an hour. I don't want this to get too crazy. I will kind of rush through the news stories. I will interact a few minutes between each news story with the chat, of course, since you guys are here. I always enjoy having a little Q&A session with you guys when I can. But we do have to move along here. Yeah, hello from Scotland, says Lee. Good deal. Well, let me go ahead and start the show here. I'm going to, of course, do a quick introduction here. Steven, thanks for the super chat, buddy. Appreciate that. Yeah, Nicholas, any sneak peek for today's topic? You're actually about to get it right now. Mark Shuttleworth is not selling Canonical or Ubuntu anytime soon, at least not yet, but what could change his mind? Linux is the most popular operating system on the planet, but it is still a niche end-user operating system. How can that be? System engineer salaries rise even higher with Linux experience. Linux gives you a $20,000 a year bump in pay. Cryptojackers come to Linux with a brand new stealth-like crypto mining malware. I often promote distros like Arch Linux on my channel, but here are 8 reasons why you should stick with Ubuntu. These are 5 stories I will be taking into account. All right, and the first story that we're going to cover today is going to be Mark Shuttleworth. He recently came out with an interview basically saying that they have no plans over at Canonical to sell anytime soon. Mark himself is not wanting to sell anytime soon. They're not wanting to, basically go the Red Hat route and be bought by some gigantic company, Microsoft, for instance. This article over at ZDNet, this was written by Stephen J. Von Nichols. Mark Shuttleworth might consider selling Canonical and its Ubuntu Linux operating system if he were still in charge of it afterwards. So I guess Shuttleworth was basically in this interview saying that there's some reasons why he's not ready to let go of Canonical just yet. At an OpenStack summit in Berlin, Shuttleworth, founder of Canonical and Ubuntu, he's the money behind the operation, right? He is the one that basically founded the company. He's the one that kept Canonical and Ubuntu going for many, many years while it was really unprofitable. It was because of his, rather large bank account that kept things afloat until Canonical recently has become a profitable company. Probably a very profitable company. We really don't know because being a private company, Canonical doesn't have to disclose any of that kind of information. So we really don't know really what they're making, but because of the cloud market and how popular Ubuntu has become there in recent years, they're probably making quite a bit of money over at Canonical these days. Anyway, somebody asked Shuttleworth, what does he make of IBM buying Red Hat? His reply was that IBM spent too much probably on Red Hat, which is probably, Shuttleworth is probably not the only one with that sort of sentiment. I mean, that $34 billion price tag that IBM paid for Red Hat, that was rather large. I mean, Red Hat was a billion-dollar company, but it was like low $billion. I mean, $34 billion was a pretty big price tag to put on Red Hat. But IBM, is looking at the future. They think that company, Red Hat, is going to continue to grow, and they're probably right. It was probably a smart move on their part. Canonical, of course, is a top Linux company, and according to Shuttleworth and the guys at Canonical, really, Canonical is in a much stronger place as far as cloud and container presence than Red Hat was. If you look at Amazon Web Services instances, so AWS instances, Ubuntu dominates that, right? They have over 300,000 instances of Ubuntu, where Red Hat only had 20,000. So that shows you a little bit how Ubuntu is playing in that space. So Shuttleworth, is quoted as doesn't want to sell. He is quoted as saying, "No, I value my independence." So one of the things about somebody like Mark Shuttleworth, he's a billionaire, right? He's already got his money. He doesn't need to make any more money in life. He doesn't need to sell his company, his baby, right? To make a quick buck. He's set. He's really doing this mainly to kind of leave his mark, right? To leave his mark on technology, on Linux, on maybe the open source movement. He's doing this. I'm not saying that he doesn't want to make money. He is a businessman, but he might have some more noble aspirations with some of this than just trying to make a quick buck. I know some folks may disagree with me there, but I think Mark Shuttleworth, is a pretty good guy. As far as, a CEO of a large corporation, he doesn't strike me as one of these evil business types that's ever going to do anything to, especially harm Linux. I don't get that from him. Anyway, Canonical has been slowly but surely winning over former Red Hat customers. This is something Canonical has been touting too, is, they're making inroads in, cloud and server and enterprise and all of this, and that they're winning over some former Red Hat customers, to the Ubuntu platform. So Canonical is definitely on the uptick. Red Hat, of course, is still growing too. So really, the big Linux companies, the big three, especially Red Hat, Canonical, and SUSE, all three of them seem to be, still growing and growing fast. So, Stephen J. Von Nichols here in the article, he suggests, that Mark Shuttleworth might consider selling. He says he values his independence, but Stephen J. Von Nichols ponders the question, well, what if somebody like Microsoft bought Canonical and said, hey, you know what, Mark Shuttleworth, we still want you to be CEO of Canonical. You can operate independently, kind of like what IBM did for Red Hat. Maybe Mark Shuttleworth would change his mind. And back to the chat. Yeah, thanks for the super chat, by the way. Pizza, thanks for re-uploading that Sunday night chat. No problem, Pizza. So for those of you that are not sure what Pizza is talking about there, I do a free and open chat Sunday every Sunday, at least I try to. And 2 Sundays ago, Pizza joined us on the video conference, the video chat, and he showed his face. Now, Pizza is a young kid. He's not really supposed to be showing his face on YouTube. I'm pretty sure his parents wouldn't like that. So he accidentally joined the video chat, and of course on the video chat, he's on video. So he asked me to, if he could edit that video, rip it down off of YouTube, edit his face out, send it back to me, and I re-upload the video, which I agreed to do, no problem. especially being a minor. I can understand why he needed that done, so no problem there. Yeah, Climby, IBM total assets last year were valued at $125 billion, so that Red Hat acquisition was over 1/4 of that. Yes. And again, like Shuttleworth is saying, they might have overpaid a little bit. I don't think that's Shuttleworth trying to throw shade on IBM or Red Hat. I think that legitimately he thinks that that might have been a little more than what somebody should have paid for Red Hat. And I think probably Shuttleworth is in a position to speak on that, being the CEO of Canonical, similar kind of company. Plus, I'm sure he's been in talks with companies about, people wanting to maybe make a play for Canonical. He probably just hasn't found the right price yet. Once somebody's willing to pay the right number, and again, probably still allow Mark to drive that ship, Because again, this is his baby. I mean, he didn't have to do this. He had already made his billions, with other companies. I think it's one of those things that probably Mark is still a young guy. He's not ready to retire. And if he sold Canonical, what would he do then? This is kind of what he's decided to make his mark on. So, yes, SUSE is your favorite distro right now. Pizza, yeah. Yeah, OpenSUSE is great. Every time I look at OpenSUSE, especially their Plasma edition, yeah, it's solid. Yeah, Peter, I guess taking into account it's going to remain live 3 times in a row. Well, it was just the last 3 weeks. I couldn't get this done on Friday. My Fridays were just full, very long days at work where I didn't have time to pre-record it, edit it, get it posted on Thursday. So the last 3 Fridays in a row, which is unusual because Fridays are a very, very busy day in retail, which is what I work. But I've had the last 3 Fridays in a row. That's unusual, so that's why we moved it to Friday just temporarily. I never know exactly what my work schedule is going to be. That's why it's very hard for me to keep a set schedule. I try to do these every Thursday. It's not quite worked out that way. I try to do those free and open chat Sundays every Sunday. I've been able to catch all of those on Sunday, but I've not been able to keep a standard time on the free and open chat Sundays. I usually try to do them in the morning. I've had to move some of them to evening a couple of times, again, due to my work schedule. I never know what I'm working week to week, so I can't plan anything really more than about a week and a half in advance. So, yeah, I have a question. If Ubuntu is free, then how does Canonical even make money? Is it some type of licensing and stuff? Yes. So, Ubuntu is, of course, free. SUSE is free. Red Hat is free. But, they are selling, support. They're selling, the services that come with that. That is how those companies make money. Yeah, Ben, you've had bad luck with SUSE? Anyone can install Ubuntu, setting it up for a large company with many users, big servers. That is what people pay Canonical for. Absolutely. Yeah. And Canonical, has large companies that pay them for that kind of support that, are putting Ubuntu on hundreds or thousands, or in some cases, tens of thousands of machines. That's what you pay a company like Red Hat or Canonical for, is, to support all of that. And so, when you need support, you can call somebody and actually get somebody on the phone to help you out. Yeah, Randy says, so it is your fault. I thought it was Thursday. I didn't see you take one into account yesterday. Yeah. But I did give you guys a heads up. At least, hopefully, I gave you guys enough of a heads up. I actually sent out a reminder Thursday morning. I knew there was no way I could record anything yesterday. So I put the little notification on YouTube. Hopefully everybody got that in a timely fashion. I know the YouTube notification system is kind of broken. Alright, I'm going to move on here. Okay, the second story on the docket. Linux is the most popular operating system on the planet. No doubt about it. But it is still very much a niche end-user operating system. Why is that? It doesn't make any sense. But this is the case. Another article by Stephen J. Von Nichols. This time, he's not at ZDNet. He's posting this over on Computer World. Anyway, the Linux desktop. With great success comes great failure. So, reading a little bit here, stop me if you've heard this one before. Such and such year will be the year of the Linux desktop. We keep saying this every year. 2018 was supposed to be the year of the Linux desktop. Now it's 2019 is going to be the year of the Linux desktop. We've been saying this for a couple of decades now, right? And we've never had that year of the Linux desktop. Probably never going to have that year of the Linux desktop. The funny thing about all of this is that Linux really won the hearts and minds of end users many years ago. I mean, Linux continues to be the most dominant server platform. Here's the thing with end users. Roughly 96% of all websites run on Linux. Think about that. 96% of websites, what are they running on? They're running on Linux. So think about the end user. Most end users on their desktop, they're running Microsoft Windows. By far the most popular end user operating system as far as desktops and laptops. But what are they doing on that desktop? They're spending all their time on the internet. It has been estimated that Americans now spend upwards of 24 hours a week online. Think about that. Think about how sad that is first, but 24 hours a week online. And this next stat is even more pathetic. We spend an average of 5.9 hours a day watching or listening to digital media. That's 6 hours a day we spend watching or listening digital media. Wow, we really need to get outside, get some fresh air, go get out in the sunshine. That is way too much time we spend on the internet and way too much time we spend watching and listening to digital media. Oh, by the way, what are all those websites and all those digital media services using? They're all using Linux. So you're using Microsoft Windows on the front end on your computer, but guess what? Everything you're doing, the back end, is all Linux. It's all Linux. The internet is all Linux. Facebook is Linux. Google, Linux. Yahoo is Linux. Netflix is Linux. Oh, and nowadays, Chromebooks are becoming more popular. Chromebooks, of course, Linux. Now, of course, we're talking about traditional PCs, but of course, the most popular operating system on the planet, if we go beyond PCs, if we're really talking about, consumer devices and we include phones, the most popular operating system on the planet is Android with about 40% of the market share. So, why has Linux not gained traction on the desktop? You've got these major companies, Canonical, Red Hat, SUSE, billion-dollar companies. They just doing great things with the server market, just making boatloads of money, right? They've never made any traction on the desktop, mainly because, in my opinion, I don't think any of them have tried, with the exception of Canonical. Canonical tried, but they realized they just couldn't make any money. They tried for over a decade to try to make money with desktop Linux. It just couldn't be done. The other problem with the Linux desktop is it's plagued by fragmentation, at least according to Stephen J. Von Nichols. It says, there's, unlike, with Windows and Mac, proprietary operating system, with Linux, there is no one Linux desktop. There are dozens, and they're not all alike. And I understand this for new users. I've heard this from new users. There's the Debian family of distros, which include things like Ubuntu and Mint and Elementary and so forth. There's, the Red Hat distro, Fedora, CentOS. Then, of course, increasingly, Arch has become very popular in recent years, and all those Arch-based distros, there's hundreds of them, Manjaro being, the most popular one probably. And then we didn't even mention Gentoo and the Gentoo-based distros and Slackware, and, the list goes on and on. We got so many popular now independent distros, Solus and Void. So, is fragmentation holding us back? I think fragmentation is one of the biggest strengths of the open source movement. I think the fact that we can fork and create our own stuff is both a positive, but yes, if you're talking about market share, it probably does hold us back. I think the interfaces too, we have so many interface choices as far as desktop environments. Right off the top of my head, I could probably name a dozen desktop environments, and not even talking about just window managers. Full desktop environments. What do we have? GNOME, Plasma, XFCE, LXDE, LXQt, Cinnamon, Monte, Pantheon, Budgie, Enlightenment, and the list goes on and on and on and on. That can be confusing to Joe Q public, right? Stephen J. Von Nichols here in the article mentions all of this is even confusing to a buddy of Linus Torvalds. This fella that works for VMware, their chief open source officer, once commented, "The current situation with dozens of distros, each with different rules, each with different versions of different libraries, some with certain libraries missing, each with different packaging tools and packaging formats, that basically tells app developers, go away. Focus on platforms that care about applications." I love that quote. He is exactly right. When we have all this fragmentation and everybody is doing their own thing, it makes it harder for developers, app developers, basically to develop for Linux in general because everybody is doing their own thing. And yeah, he's right. We're basically telling app developers, go away, focus on platforms that care about you. And you know what? Who cares about developers right now? Microsoft. I mean, that's what they're after. Microsoft is really trying to attract developers these days where, you know what, maybe Linux as a whole, as a community, we're kind of lagging behind a little bit in that area. Back to the chat for a second. Yeah, outside is scary. No, it's, especially, well, this time of year it's cold. Put on a jacket. Yeah, Peter, this is about Microsoft, Google, VMware. They all pay a lot of money to the Linux Foundation. True. That means two things, pay for play and much better support in the future. The internet is the new idiot box. Yeah, those were shocking numbers. 24 hours a day or 24 hours a week on the internet. That's a lot of time spent on the internet. I can understand some people maybe for work spending that much time on the internet. That digital media number, 6 hours a day. Think about that, 6 hours a day. I hope you're watching and listening to educational stuff, but I fear a lot of that 6 hours a day is just garbage. That really, that's an epidemic. I mean, it's unhealthy. I mean, this is, again, if you're not doing something productive, something educational, yes, step away from all this. Go do something outdoors, something physical and, healthy for you. Or go spend time with the family, or go, do some kind of hobby. With pay for play, you think about the Linux Foundation might be less critical of VMware using the GPL license code while not making the program open source. Yeah, that's true. VMware is not open source. Yeah, too many distros, too many desktops. I think, the GPL and all these free licenses, again, I think it is one of the strongest points for the open source movement and for, Linux. But it's a good point. It's a positive for a certain type of user. Let me put it that way. For many of us here, we see all of this as a positive. But for most of those people that are still on Windows and Mac, when you present them with this kind of freedom, they don't want it. They're going to resist it, right? They don't need it. That's... Yeah, that's why Flatpak, Snap, and AppImage exist. Yep. Yeah, and the article did discuss package formatting was a problem. You got, of course, deb packages, RPM packages, Yeah, now we have these universal package formats, but you got 3 of them, right? Yeah, Red Hat decided they needed to create Flatpak. Canonical decided to create Snap. App Image, I don't know how long App Image has been around or who created it. But yeah, we've got 3 different package formats, I would say competing, but they really don't compete with each other. I mean, you can use all 3. And this is the problem. We can't agree on anything. You're never going to get agreement on like one init system. I know people say everybody should just use systemd, switch to systemd. Okay, even if tomorrow we got 100% of all the Linux distros out there on systemd, everybody agreed, yes, we're all going to use systemd. The very next day, somebody using one of those distros is going to realize, it's all licensed under the GPL. I can fork this distro, rename it, take out systemd, put my own init system in it, and it starts all over again and again. That's just the nature of what we do. It by its very nature, this will never change. So, again, I think it's a positive for us. I think most of you guys probably see it as a positive. But again, for the average end user out there, they don't see any of this as a positive. They see it as too much fragmentation. Yeah, cold weather. What is cold weather for you? It was, I don't know, the highs yesterday were in the 50s. It was cool here. The lows at night were probably in the 30s. Like in the middle of the night. Of course, not outside, those hours. But it was actually kind of cool here the last few days. Yeah, Kerwin, how you doing? 3 a.m. in Melbourne. You might need to get some sleep, Kerwin. Yeah. Hello from Brazil. Tiago, thank you. We need a universal package installer. Yes, let's make 3. There's probably actually more than 3. There's probably people working on others because people complain that Flatpak, is not right. That people complain Snap isn't right. People complain that App Image isn't right. So somebody's probably already working on a 4th or even 5th universal package installer. So we're going to have more than just those 3 eventually. Yeah, Chris is asking, what was so bad with sysv? And systemd seems to work fine. I don't understand the hate for it. Yeah. Well, everybody seemed to want to move from systemv. The sysv init. I mean, Canonical and Red Hat both started moving away from it like a decade ago. That's why Canonical created Upstart many years ago. And Red Hat actually used Upstart for a little while before they decided to create their own init system with systemd. So people moved away from sysv actually quite a while back. So, all right, let's keep things going here. Nope. Give me a second, guys. Hope I didn't mess anything up on the stream. Hit the wrong hotkey. All right, and this next story, for those of you in this line of work, system engineer salaries rise even higher with Linux experience. Linux experience can give you upwards of a $20,000 a year bump in pay. So this article, now I'm not in this line of work, so not something that I'm that familiar with, but salaries rising with Linux experience, a good thing. I know many of you are either in this line of work or potentially could be in this line of work at some point. Some of you are looking to do something as a career with Linux. So basically, system engineers and system administrators, these two terms, some folks use them interchangeably, but according to this article, the positions are actually pretty different. In the broadest terms, quote, system engineers must design and implement a company's system, which comprises network, servers, devices. So they design and implement all of this stuff, where the system administrator role is largely charged with just keeping everything running, if that makes sense. So system admins are, the very active role. They're constantly monitoring the network and fixing issues, where the engineers are the ones that build the thing, right? They anticipate user needs, future problems, and they're very much forward-looking, where the sysadmin is designed to, or is there to basically maintain the system. So the educational path for a software-focused system engineer usually starts with a bachelor's or a master's in things like computer science, information systems, engineering. They'll learn the tools, techniques, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, what this article did, they went to a popular job board site. I think they used dice.com or one of these sites. Anyway, and they took an average of what System Engineer 1, System Engineer 2, System Engineer 3, Linux System Engineer made. And you will see a rather steep difference once you have some Linux experience. So the first 3 tiers of System Engineer are making nice annual salaries, by the way, somewhere around 90,000, 85 to 95,000. We'll average it out, the first 3 levels here. You're making 90,000 a year. But what is Linux Systems Engineer making? $112,000 per year. That, again, that is a $20,000 a year pay bump for knowing Linux, right? Being familiar with Linux and open source technologies. So basically the point of this is if you're wanting to do this kind of work, get to know Linux and Unix servers, pass your Red Hat Certified System Administrator exam, depending on your focus. And what they're talking about here is, of course, if you're not going to be working with Red Hat systems, then you may not choose that particular exam, but whatever exams, get some exams, pass them. Obviously, if you're working on Debian-based systems or Ubuntu-based systems, you may not want to worry about the Red Hat exam. Well, of course, there's no harm in taking that exam, even if you never work on Red Hat systems. Become familiar with open source architecture. And I get emails occasionally, direct messages on Mastodon from some of you folks, looking to get into making a living with Linux. I don't do computer stuff for a living. I'm not a sysadmin, so I really can't direct you guys. And usually I just tell you guys, learn what you can. If you're looking for like deeper knowledge about Linux, other than just, the superficial knowledge you can get, with something like watching a YouTube channel like mine. The website everybody seems to tout these days is Linux Academy. Like if you want to go in depth, deep about Linux, how Linux works, that's a good starting point. Yeah. The downside of that Red Hat exam is it's expensive. Yeah, let me switch to the chat view here. How expensive is that Red Hat exam, Peter? You know offhand? I'm assuming if you mentioned it. Yeah. Keep it simple, stupid? Yeah, what does KISS mean, Richard? Yeah, keep it simple, stupid. That's the KISS philosophy. KISS is an engineering principle. Don't overcomplicate things. So I'm assuming we're still on the System D argument. Just taking a wild guess is where KISS. Yeah. That is kind of, I guess, what people complain the most about. System D, it tries to do too much. It's really more than just the init system. Yeah, Chaz is asking, is that a screensaver on that monitor in the background? No, that is, I've got a terminal open on that monitor, full screen, and in the terminal, I'm running a program called CMatrix. If you're on an Ubuntu or an Ubuntu-based distro, or a Debian-based distro, sudo apt install CMatrix will get you that program. Then, just type CMatrix in the terminal, hit enter, and you got the matrix. If you want to kill it, type Q to quit. All right. So, yeah, it's CMatrix. Yeah, somebody else, undefined, answered the question for you. Yeah, looked like a matrix type. Yep, that's the matrix. The downside of the Red Hat exam. Yeah, it's expensive. I'm not certain about the cost, but I've heard around 10,000. 10,000 euros? Surely not. That's in the Netherlands for the Red Hat System Administrator certificate. Wow. That is insanely expensive if that's the case. Manjaro i3. Yeah, Manjaro i3 is great. What I'm running on my main production machine. I'm an electrician, and I would suggest looking at the what industrial electricians make if you're interested. What is your opinion about Runit and OpenRC? I've tried distros that use both Runit and OpenRC. They boot up. I mean, that's All these init systems, again, I'm not, a system engineer or anything. I don't do that much with these init systems. Does the machine boot? Yes. Does it boot pretty fast? Yes, all of them. I mean, they all work. Again, but I use Linux mainly as an end user product here on my desktop and on my laptops. If I was doing something in a server environment, I may have a different opinion on these things. Again, that's not my field. Okay. All right, this next story, we always have to talk a little bit about security here. And this next story, Cryptojackers come to Linux with a brand new stealth-like crypto mining malware. So, Trend Micro experts discovered an atypical cryptocurrency mining malware for Linux systems. So, basically, we don't have to deal with this kind of thing, certainly not as much as Windows. And increasingly, we don't have to deal with this kind of thing as much as Mac users. Mac is being targeted a lot more these days with malware, adware, spyware. But we still have to be careful on Linux. Linux users are not immune from stealth cryptocurrency mining, also called cryptojacking. So there's a Japanese crypto security company called Trend Micro. They discovered this cryptocurrency miner that they're calling Core Kurds. I'm not exactly sure what that acronym stands for. Core Kurds behaves in a strange way with the potential to hide its activity from Linux users. Now, that is not unusual for something like this to try to mask itself, hide itself, so you can't detect it on the system. But the cryptocurrency miner they found, Core Kurds, is focused on Monero coins. So that is, I guess, the cryptocurrency they're trying to mine for, Monero. Makes it difficult to detect as infected systems will only indicate performance issues. So basically, it's trying to hide itself. You open up, I don't know, a system monitor, HTOP or whatever. You're not seeing, these rogue processes. You're not seeing the crypto miner going. You open up your logs. I think it's also deleting and replacing logs. Anyway, it's a pretty advanced kind of malware here, where the only real reason something happened to your machine is because it's crypto mining. Your CPU usage is going to spike. In some cases, it spikes to 100%, basically slowing down your computer to a crawl. So something's wrong, but again, you go and start looking through system monitors and your logs. You really can't detect what's going on. It's probably this. How did it get installed on Linux machines? Now, Linux is supposed to be secure, right? Nothing gets installed on your system. Nothing gets installed or removed as far as software without you giving a root password. Also, most things require root privileges to do any kind of system changes. Well, here's the thing. They don't give 100% explanation as this is what happened, but they suspect this is due to plugins. People installing plugins. They don't mention what program, but I'm assuming, because if you're going to target, end users, what do most people have on their machines? Web browsers, right? So it's going to be Chrome or Firefox plugins probably that were the issue. Now, when you install these things, just like any other software, you give your machine, you type root password to give permission to install these plugins on your system. But when you give them root permission, they could do anything, right? So these are some sort of malicious plugins that put the crypto mining software on your system. And then your CPU just goes completely ape. And, anyway, so increasingly, this has become a problem. I think this is the third or fourth story I've done. This is episode 16 of Taking Into Account. I think we've had 3 or 4 of these stories about malware on Linux, and all of them involved crypto mining. We had the Snap Pack in the Ubuntu store that was crypto mining. The Gentoo hack was also probably due to crypto mining. I think we had a malicious Arch package, a AUR package, or I forget exactly, that was crypto mining. So crypto mining has really become what we need to worry about as far as desktop Linux users. I mean, we really need to be more conscious, especially about the plugins we install. We always talk about, just don't go grab, this PPA or this AUR package or this snap pack from just anybody and install it. But we don't talk about plugins, browser plugins, or, Office plugins, GIMP plugins, for all these programs that use these third-party plugins. When you install these plugins, you have to, of course, give your machine a root password. You're giving the plugin root permission to your system. Do you trust who you got that plugin from? This is something we need to talk about a little more. Occasionally I see people mention it on support forums and stuff. Just don't go grab any plugin. But we need to tell, especially newer users, about this more than we do. Yeah, undefined particle. You don't get prompted for a password while installing browser plugins. Also, the extensions affect only web content, unless you're running Firefox pre-57. So you think it's maybe a older browser issue? Older? I think most people, Linux desktop users, are probably running Ubuntu or one of the main Ubuntu flavors. And most Ubuntu users stick to LTSs. So it could be older versions of Firefox that are the problem. I don't know. The article didn't mention. I'm just assuming it's going to be a web browser issue. Because if you're going to target, plugins, if that's your way in, what does everybody have on their machine? Everybody has a web browser. So it would make sense that would be the target. Yeah, Clive, DT, forgot to pay his ISP bill this month. Have I been buffering? The stream looks good on my end here. But if there are some issues, I do apologize about that. But I don't think anybody is here at my place. So there shouldn't be any buffering. I've got a green in OBS. Everything looks good here in YouTube. Yeah, it was the AUR package that nobody used. Yeah. Can you paste that link for the Cryptojack article? Yeah, actually I can. I need to go back. Now, it'll be this afternoon probably before I come back. I'm going to post a link to all the articles in the show description. Once this finishes processing later, probably in a couple hours, I'll come back and put all the articles in the description with timestamps. But there's that cryptovest.com is where that story came from. Are you seeding any torrents? No, nothing's going on here. And again, we got green in OBS. And OBS would tell me if I was having some issues. Refresh the stream, though. If it's a problem. It dropped for about 4 seconds. Okay. That did happen the other day. What was that live stream we did the other day? It was about the microphone, the new microphone. You guys have actually mentioned it in the chat here. Yeah. And that one dropped for a couple of seconds, too. But that one I know. I had people here on the network. That was a very impromptu stream, too. But this one I had planned. I know nobody's here. Nobody's torrenting. There isn't somebody on another computer in the house, playing some massive multiplayer online game on Steam, while I'm trying to do here. So, is there an audio desync for anyone else? Is the audio out of sync for the live stream? I'll have to go back and watch it later. Yeah, refresh fixes it most of the times, yeah. And I get these problems watching other people's streams. Sometimes it'll buffer, it'll drop down into like 240p. And even when they quit buffering, you're still watching in 240p. You actually have to go and refresh the stream to get that 1080p to come back. Yeah, everything, audio is fine here, yeah. I'm listening with Bluetooth headphones and it's in sync, yeah. Yeah, I've played a little bit with the audio here with my new microphone, but if it should be in sync. I mean, I've recorded a couple of videos with this now in the last couple of days. If it's out of sync, it may be a few milliseconds. one way or another. It shouldn't be something to where it's really annoying to watch. I never did ask you guys about the audio levels. I guess the audio levels are good though, since we've been going for about 45 minutes here. Yeah, do you have any Windows PCs at home? No. I don't have anything with Windows on it. I haven't had anything with Windows on it in years. Yeah, Johan, great stream. Got to go. All right. See ya, Johan. Yeah, my experience with YouTube, if you don't select 1080p, they drop the resolution sometimes, even though you have 7 Mbps download load balancing from YouTube. Yeah, it's probably an issue with YouTube servers. It's not anything on our end. It's probably a problem with their machines. There was a brief buffering, but now everything is okay. You know, another thing is that laptop behind me. I didn't think about that. That is running Pop! OS. I installed Pop! OS this week to review it for the Big Daddy podcast tomorrow night. Every Saturday night, Big Daddy Linux Live. The distro everybody's taking a look at this week is Pop! OS. And I'm sure in the sys tray on most distros that are running full desktop environments, they're going to have some kind of like package manager applet that every so often checks for updates. That can suck bandwidth. So I should check that and actually kill that. Matter of fact, why don't we put that to the test? How about I just kill this machine? The distro that was on that laptop for the last 2 or 3 months before that, of course, was Arco Linux. And I didn't have anything like a Pamac or Octopi or anything, constantly checking for updates. I always just did the updates myself in the terminal when I felt like it, which was usually like once a month, twice a month at most. Even on Manjaro here on my main production machine, I update, I don't know, maybe every 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. So I'm not one of those. I'm updating every day. I just update when I think about it. All right, let's get to the last story. All right, so you guys know I often promote Arch Linux. I've made videos about Arch Linux. Of course, I'm running Manjaro, an Arch-based Linux distribution right now on my desktop. I just mentioned I was running Arco Linux on that laptop behind me for about 3 months. I've used a lot of Arch-based distros on physical hardware. I've probably reviewed 50 different Arch-based distros on the channel. I ran mainline Arch on this machine for a few weeks early on in the channel's history, and I've used Arch and many of these Arch-based derivatives off and on for years. I probably first installed Arch Linux, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. Like most of you, I started with Linux. In my case, about 10 years ago, you run something like Ubuntu or SUSE or Fedora or Mint or whatever for a year or two. Then you try to, test yourself out a little bit. And that's the same thing. I installed Ubuntu. I think it was my first distro ever. Hopped a little bit. Eventually tried Arch a few times. Tried Arch a few times in a VM, then on physical hardware. Never really lived in Arch for very long because I always liked stable distros, so things like Debian Stable, the Ubuntu LTS. These days, though, I've gotten to where I kind of like being on a rolling release distro. It does present some challenges because rolling release can break things, especially critical packages I use every day, things like OBS. I have to have OBS to do what I do. What if Manjaro decides to update OBS today and it breaks everything? I don't have to worry about that on static release distros, on stable distros, because OBS won't get updated until I update the distro, in 6 months or 2 years or whatever the next release will be. So this particular article here is 8 reasons why you should stick with Ubuntu. And some of these reasons I think are good reasons. Some of these reasons, though, I think are questionable. You guys can feel free to debate this in the chat as well. The first one I think is a really good reason. Ubuntu just got a new theme. Ubuntu looks good. Let's face it, looks are everything, especially to potential new Linux users. So, starting with Ubuntu 18.04, they started pushing out this new theme that at the time they were calling the Community theme. which is just a gorgeous theme with that black title bar, with the white panels, the silver kind of left-hand pane. Then they had the new icon set, still orange, but a very pretty orange icon set called Suru. Now, this is the official theme starting in 1810. So 1810, the community theme is now got a real name. It's called Yaru. The icon theme is called Suru. And yes, it looked great. It's just gorgeous. It's probably the best Ubuntu has ever looked as far as the default theme and icon, the GNOME shell theme. So I will say, that's a pretty good reason. Ubuntu just got a new theme. Absolutely. Looks good. Number 2, Ubuntu still has the best software support. Yeah, that's a pretty good reason too. When it comes to, most desktop applications. Now, when we're talking about free and open source software, there are other distros that have really good software support. You can find all the software you need in Debian. You can find all the software you need in Arch. But with Ubuntu, especially proprietary closed source software, so these big companies, what are they going to make their applications to work on if they're going to support Linux at all? Usually they're targeting Ubuntu. That's just the case, and it makes sense because of market share. Ubuntu has the most games. Now, this one is kind of strange. Games, I'm not sure why Ubuntu would have the most games. I'm assuming most Linux gamers, you pretty much have to be on Steam. Steam games work on every Linux distro, right? Now, they do make a point that Steam, especially initially, targeted Ubuntu as the platform. And for the most part, devs probably still mostly target Ubuntu. So there is some point to that, but I don't like that title. Ubuntu has the most games. That should be reworded. Many alternatives are based on Ubuntu. This is number 4. Now, this is a solid point to mention. So if you don't like Ubuntu, which I don't like the GNOME desktop environment, full disclosure, I do have other official flavors of Ubuntu that I personally would use. I would probably do Lubuntu with the LXQt desktop environment. Maybe Xubuntu. I probably wouldn't do some of the heavier ones, but I know a lot of people love Ubuntu Mate. Of course, Kubuntu with the Plasma desktop is a very popular distro. And then you have the non-official, distros that base off of Ubuntu. Things like Mint, Elementary, Enlightenment, and yada, yada, yada. There's thousands probably of these Ubuntu-based distros. So if you don't like mainline Ubuntu, you can still get a lot of the good stuff that Ubuntu does, but in a different sort of package. So do you want to develop the cloud? Now, I understand, getting back to like the system engineer stuff we talked about in the previous article, but yeah, if you want to do anything with cloud development, it might be a good idea to be familiar with Ubuntu and some of their technologies, especially, on the server. But I think for average, like Linux desktop users, I'm not sure why they threw that in. Ubuntu still has name recognition. Yeah, if anybody knows any Linux distro as far as by name, they've probably heard of Ubuntu. I'm not sure how name recognition would make somebody want to use that product. One, that's a positive. It's not a negative, but I'm not sure that you really benefit from that. Now, if you say that Ubuntu is the most popular Linux distribution, I could see that as a positive, because then you're talking about numbers of users, number of developers, potentially better support, more people out there to get support from. I could understand that. Again, I think maybe that just needs to be reworded, because Ubuntu has name recognition. That's not a great point to me. Number 7, Ubuntu's arguably better than ever. Absolutely. So we could go into a little more detail with that, but I don't think we need to. Ubuntu gets better with every release, as it should, as every Linux distro should. They all get better with each release, and Ubuntu, I think, certainly gets better with each release. If you stick to the LTS releases, like most desktop users do, and you track 804 to 1004 to 1204 to 1404, 1604 to 1804, yes, each one of them gets better. They keep getting better. A better look and feel, better performance in some cases. So certainly better driver support, hardware support, that sort of thing. Of course, a lot of that ends up, being because of the heavy lifting done by the kernel team. But yes, Ubuntu certainly gets better all the time. And number 8, Canonical is becoming profitable. Yes, Canonical is a profitable company. Why? Again, this is a strange point to make. But what does that have to do with why I should run Ubuntu? I guess the point is Ubuntu's not likely to go away because the company behind it, Canonical, is making money. Okay, but still, that's not a solid reason for me. I mean, I use distros that have one-man development teams sometimes. And so what if they go away? So what if that person decides to quit the project and that distro goes away? There's hundreds of other distros out there to choose from. I'm not married to whatever I'm running on any of my machines. I can just move to another distro. So that's a strange point. Overall, I thought this was a pretty neat article. Made some solid points. I think some of these points, though, he could have reworded at least the subtitles a little differently. And back to the chat. Yeah. Yes, I know when I mentioned I don't like GNOME, I was going to get some comments. Yeah, you use Apple. It's spin on a very old FreeBSD. Yeah, Apple is based off FreeBSD. Yeah, poor GNOME. Ubuntu 16.04. Ubuntu 16.04 was solid. I ran it for a little while. I think I ran 14.04 actually. I ran 14.04 for the full 2 years, 14.04 to 16.04. 14.04 was great. Yeah, GNOME is like riding a moped. It's fun, but you don't want your friends to find out. I would think Fedora, CentOS, and Red Hat is also a good cloud development platform. Yeah. Well, I think his point was maybe Canonical is the leader in that space, so if you were in that, I don't know. That's strange for this particular article because pretty much everything else was, hey, choose Ubuntu. Most of it had to do with Ubuntu on the desktop. Why are you now all of a sudden talking about, anything dealing with the server? Now, you could make a lot of good arguments. You could make an article, 8 reasons why you should use Ubuntu server, because Ubuntu server is fantastic too. But this is strange that they just threw that one point about the cloud in there. I think he should have saved that for a different article. Yeah, Ubuntu proper is better now that they dropped Unity, but that's just your opinion, Steve? Yeah. I liked Unity. I liked Unity a lot better than I like GNOME. But, again, Canonical, they're not making any money on desktop Linux, and, too many Canonical employees were working on Unity, and what was the point of it? If ultimately the point is, to be a profitable company, yeah, it made sense for Ubuntu instead of, working on their own desktop environment, which really doesn't do anything for them. Just use what's already out there. It made sense for them as a company to eventually, move from Upstart to Systemd once Debian moved to Systemd. Debian's already doing all the heavy lifting. They're going with Systemd. You're basing off of Debian. Just stick with Systemd. Same thing with GNOME. Yeah, Kaizoku. This article was written by a Canonical employee. So this article was written by Bertel King Jr. over here at makeusub.com. I have no idea if Bertel King Jr. is a Canonical employee. I don't think so. He's a writer, BA in history and government. Doesn't mention anything about him being a Canonical employee, so I don't know if that was a joke or... Yeah, Chaz, you didn't care for Unity either? Yeah. I liked the Unity as far as the workflow, as far as it made sense. There was very little mouse travel. Now, you couldn't customize much in it if you were that sort of person. I'm not. Maybe you didn't like the looks of it. I really don't get into how my desktop environment looks that much. Although Unity wasn't that bad looking of a desktop environment. But just the workflow in Unity was a lot better. It made sense. That bar, that panel on the left-hand side, the button that launches the menu was on the left-hand side. When you make your programs full screen like your browser, the close and minimize buttons are all on the left-hand side. Plus, in a browser, your back button is all on the left-hand side. You never travel to the right side of the screen for anything. Makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of people didn't understand where Canonical was going, especially that initial move when they moved the window decorations and the window buttons to the left-hand side of the screen. A lot of people, why are you doing that? We're so used to it being on the right-hand side of the screen. But it made sense for where they were going with Unity. Once you started using Unity, if you used it for a few weeks, like it clicks in your head, oh, this makes perfect sense. I would never put the buttons back on the right-hand side. Even now that Unity's dead, I don't use Unity. I'm using Qtile right now, a tiling window manager, but even something like OpenBox, I always put the buttons on the left-hand side now. Why? Because it makes sense. Everything you do typically is left to right. In the Western world, we write left to right. We read everything left to right. Everything just starts on the left. So it's odd for, that one thing, controlling the windows, to travel with the mouse to the right side of the screen all the time. Will the Debian no third-party patches affect Ubuntu? I'm not sure on that. Yeah, Kaizuku says he was a secret Canonical employee. Yeah, sudo apt install Unity desktop. Yeah, Unity, while I say it's not dead, it's not being developed, at least not by Canonical. It's not a dead project either. It's still being maintained by somebody out there. Both Unity 7, which is the real Unity, the desktop Unity, and Unity 8, which was going to be Unity Touch for phones. Both those projects have been turned over to the community, and there are folks still working on them. I don't think the Unity desktop, the Unity 7 desktop will ever be dead. Certainly not for many, many years. If you want to still use it, absolutely, you can use it. Yeah, global hotkeys is much more convenient than buttons. Then you don't care where they put the buttons. Absolutely. But here's the thing. Most people, for whatever reason, avoid the keyboard. Me, I hotkey everything. Tiling window manager, of course. Everything's hotkeyed. Even when I was using OpenBox, though, you guys saw some of what I did with OpenBox. Hotkeyed all the common programs I use all the time, such as Terminal, Text Editor, things like that. Just have keyboard hotkeys for everything. It makes sense. It makes sense, actually, to learn more. to do more with the keyboard. It will really, your wrist will thank you. This mouse wrist here, where you're always moving the mouse, and yeah, get your hand off of the mouse. You don't need the mouse. Yeah, Tyler. Rest in peace, Unity 8. No, the UBports team is the one that I think took over Unity 8. They're still working on it. Matter of fact, every now and then they put out new images for it. Yeah, Kieran, Ubuntu 16.04, smiley face. Yeah. All right, guys. I think that's going to be it for this. So this was the fifth and final story we had just discussed here. Normally I read a viewer question or comment when I do the pre-recorded videos. Here I just read your guys' comments here in the chat. So yeah, if you use the mouse, set sensitivity high and disable mouse acceleration. Yeah. At any rate, Unity was and is better than GNOME Shell. The transparent blurry dash is nice. I wish the GNOME team, implemented some of what Unity did. I mean, the reason Canonical created Unity is because very early on, when GNOME 3 was first being developed, the GNOME team didn't want to implement mainly the global menu. Ubuntu really wanted that global menu, and GNOME said, no, we're not going to have anything like that. So that was really what sparked Canonical to go its own direction there. And early on, it was probably the right direction. Those early versions of Unity, although they were slow and buggy, they got a lot better. Unity was so much better than those initial versions of GNOME 3. Man, the first few versions of GNOME 3, man, that was a train wreck. Probably wasn't as bad as those initial versions of KDE 4. Those of you that were around when KDE went from 3.5 to KDE 4, wow. That was bad too. And guess what, guys? We're getting ready to do all this again. Eventually, GNOME 3, they're moving to GNOME 4. It's going to be a major change, and it's going to be a mess. Same thing with Plasma. We're eventually going to move away from Plasma 5, and version 6. So, yeah, a JC disciple. Yeah, good lord, KDE 4 was terrible. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that why Plasma is not like the default desktop environment on really most of the main, like the big, polished corporate kind of distros. Why GNOME has always been there is because really KDE 4 kind of put a lot of people off. Again, I talked about how GNOME 3 wasn't good either, but GNOME 3, as much of a mess as it was nothing like KDE 4. A lot of people were turned off by KDE 4. The problem is you get a desktop environment that just works. KDE 3.5 was just so good. It's like, all right, we finally got this thing. It's almost perfect. Now let's just break everything. And then GNOME does it, right? The last version of GNOME 2 was what? GNOME 2.32, I think. And then they decided, man, this is really good. This thing looks so good. We're getting all these new users coming over, especially, Ubuntu with the old GNOME 2 desktop was really winning over some users back during the Vista days. And then you know what we're going to do? We're going to break it. We're just going to break everything. Yeah, Kaizoku, I didn't take you for a cute guy. So QT. I'm not an app developer, so as far as the toolkits, GTK versus Qt, doesn't matter to me, but most app developers will tell you Qt is the better toolkit, more modern. If you're going to start a project, that's probably the one you want to go with, is the Qt toolkit. Yeah, Peter, DT is a window manager guy. Yeah. You're talking about desktop environments. Yeah, you're talking about, I would run LXQt for a desktop environment. The reason I would run that is because it uses the OpenBox window manager. And I'm an OpenBox guy. I don't necessarily have to use the full LXQt desktop environment. I could log out of LXQt, and in the login manager, there would be an OpenBox session. I would have to configure it, but of course I have all my OpenBox configs on GitLab. In 2 minutes, I could have my OpenBox session set up just the way I like it and be up and running. That's the great thing about these minimal window managers. If you save your configs to something like GitHub or GitLab, it doesn't matter what distro I run. You can give me literally any distro, and I'm going to be right at home with it because I'm going to pull down my OpenBox configs or my Qtile configs, and it will be exactly what I'm running right now. The only difference between the distros will be when I open up a terminal, if I have to do something with the package manager, I'll have to use different package managers, right? On Arch, I'm using Pacman, Debian, Ubuntu, apt, DNF and Fedora, Emerge and Gentoo. Other than that, they'll look and function the same because of the window managers I use and because I'm always using my configs. So that is the beauty of the window managers. Where the full desktop environments, you're usually not configuring them to suit your needs, and you're probably not saving your configs. So LXQt on Ubuntu looks different than LXQt in Fedora, than LXQt in Sabian, or whatever distro, Seduction. They're all going to have their own vision of what the LXQt desktop environment should look like. Same thing with GNOME and Plasma and XFCE and all these big desktop environments. But guess what? My OpenBox is always my OpenBox. Same thing with my Qtile or my Xmonad or my i3 is always my i3, right? As long as I've got my configs saved, I just pull it down from GitLab and good to go. Yeah, hopefully transitioning from Qt 5 to 6 will not be a bumpy road. It will probably be a smoother road than what the GTK guys are probably going to go. Well, yeah. When I install another desktop environment in Ubuntu 18.04, I get a black screen in that desktop environment. What desktop environment are you installing? And are you getting a black screen, like, not at the login manager? You still have a login manager, but when you log into that new desktop environment, you just get a black screen? I ask this because if you're installing like a window manager, not a desktop environment, so a window manager like OpenBox, for example, or Xmonad, you sometimes will get a black screen when you log in. Guess what? That's not a bug, that's a feature. You're actually logged into those window managers. That black screen is because you haven't set a wallpaper. There's no panels or anything on the screen because there's no panels or anything in OpenBox or Xmonad. You have to set all of this stuff up. So now, if you're installing something like XFCE or Mate and getting a black screen, yeah, that's a problem. Yeah. You installed XFCE? Okay, yeah, that's a problem then. Yeah, I don't know what the black screen could be. Hey guys, who's good at Calculus 2? I took Calculus 2 about 25 years ago. Don't remember any of it. Sorry, terminal. Yeah, install LightDM and set it as default. Alright guys. Well, we've been streaming a little over an hour, so I better shut it down for the day. I do want to thank all you guys for hanging out. You guys are great. And we still got JC Disciple, Desh, Kaizoku, Peter, Steve, Terminal. Thanks guys for hanging out with me for this Friday morning. This was fun. Of course, before I go, this show was made possible by Ansem, Carlos, Chris, David, Leo, Rob, and Tony. These guys, they're the sponsors of the show. Without these guys, none of this would be possible. Also brought to you by all those fine ladies and gentlemen. You see their names on the screen. They are the supporters of this channel. If you enjoyed this video, you enjoy the content you're seeing on the channel, please consider supporting DistroTube over on Patreon. Alright guys, peace.